The sky was clear over the Pacific Ocean when the shadow fell. It came without warning, a dark mass blotting out the sun for thousands of miles. People on the ground looked up, phones snapped pictures, and panic began to spread. But those who knew what they were seeing, those in the military and governments in the Yonin, knew this was not just another day. It had been coming. For weeks now, the alien ship had hovered at the edge of Mars' orbit, silent, unmoving, and massive beyond belief. No one had heard from it. No signals, no messages, no threats. Just its presence like a hammer held above the world. And then, finally, it moved. It crossed through the inner solar system like a storm cloud made of steel and light. Telescopes tracked it, satellites watched it, fighter jets tried to follow it, but they could not keep up. The ship did not land. It simply stopped high above the Earth, above the clouds, above all reach. Below it, floating alone in the empty blue, was a small shuttle. Inside that shuttle sat 4 humans and 2 aliens. Ethan Blake sat near the front, his hands resting on his lap. He was not a soldier, not a pilot, not even a scientist. He had once taught history at a small college in Ohio. Now he worked for the United Nations, trying to explain humanity to beings who might destroy it. Across from him sat the envoys. They were tall, taller than any human, with pale skin that shimmered like oil on water. Their eyes were large, black, and deep. They wore robes that seemed to move on their own, shifting colors like mist over a lake. One of them spoke. Her voice came through a translator built into the room. "You have been given time to respond." Ethan swallowed hard. "We have considered your offer," he said, "and we would like more time to discuss it." The other envoy tilted his head slightly. "You were given 1 week. That time has passed. We are asking for an extension," Ethan said. "Just a few days. Our planet is complicated. There are many voices. We need to listen to all of them before we decide." The first envoy looked past him toward the window. Below, the Earth turned slowly. Oceans and forests, cities and deserts, all spinning beneath the weight of this moment. "Your species has been observed for some time," she said. "You fight often, you destroy much, but you also create. You dream, yet you remain dangerous, undisciplined, unpredictable." "We're still learning," Ethan said. "Isn't that what growth is?" The second envoy turned to him. "Growth requires direction. Yours is chaotic. We're not perfect," Ethan admitted. "But we believe in something called freedom. It's messy, yes, but it's ours." The envoys looked at each other, then back at him. "Then choose," they said. The message was clear. Submit or die. Ethan felt the weight of every human life pressing down on him. Billions of people waiting for a decision he was not ready to make. He looked at the others in the room. Lisa Harper, a diplomat from Canada. Daniel Choi, a tech expert from South Korea. And Rachel Norton, a former Marine who had come along as security. None of them spoke. They knew what was happening. This was not a negotiation. It was a verdict. The shuttle began to move again, descending through the atmosphere. The envoys did not say goodbye. They simply vanished, beamed away by their own ship, leaving behind only silence. When the shuttle landed on the carrier below, the world was already watching. Reporters, cameras, leaders, generals, all waited to hear what had happened. But Ethan said nothing. Not yet. He stepped off the shuttle, looked up at the sky, where the dreadnought had been, and whispered a single word. The world did not wait for a plan. As soon as the shuttle landed and the news spread, chaos followed. People took to the streets, some cheering, others crying. Governments held emergency meetings. Armies moved into position. The message from the aliens was clear: obey or be erased. But Ethan Blake had said no. He didn't shout it. He didn't sign a treaty or make a speech. He simply whispered it into the wind, and the world heard. In Washington, military leaders argued over what to do next. Some wanted peace at any cost. Others demanded war. Across Europe, scientists tried to find weapons that could fight something so far beyond human tech. In Asia, religious leaders called it The end of days. In Africa, leaders met in secret to decide if Earth should even try to resist. And in the middle of it all stood Lena Torres. She had once been a Marine, but now she ran a small security company in Texas. She wasn't rich, wasn't famous, and had no political power. Yet when the call came, she answered. It started with a message sent through old channels, ones used by soldiers who no longer trusted their own governments. The message was short. They will not save us. We must save ourselves. Within hours, she had a team. Some were ex-soldiers like her. Others were hackers, engineers, pilots, and even one former astronaut who had walked away from NASA years ago. They called themselves the Free Earth Network. No flags, no borders, just people who refused to kneel. They met in an abandoned warehouse outside Denver. Maps covered the walls. Computers blinked with data. Plans were drawn up, then thrown out. Nothing made sense. We don't have ships, one man said. We don't have lasers or shields or anything that can reach space. Then we make them, Lena said. But how? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she pulled up a file on the main screen. It was old, buried deep in government archives. The title read, Project Lazarus, Restricted Access. Everyone in the room leaned forward. Lazarus had been a secret program during the Cold War, created when rumors first reached Earth that we were not alone. The idea was simple. If aliens ever came, we would need something big enough to stop them. But the project was shut down before it could be finished. Too dangerous, they said. Too unstable. Now, it might be the only thing left. Lena's team worked fast. They tracked down old reports, found hidden labs, and even spoke to retired scientists who still remembered pieces of the puzzle. Meanwhile, across the world, other groups formed. Rebels, hackers, students, and even criminals began to organize. They shared files, built networks, and prepared for what was coming. No one knew if they could win, but they knew they couldn't lose without trying. Back in New York, Ethan Blake sat alone in a small room inside the Yoon building. He stared at a blank screen, his hands shaking. He had told the aliens no, but now he had to live with that choice. He picked up his phone and sent a single message. If you're going to fight, do it right. Minutes later, the message was received in Denver. Lena read it, nodded, and turned back to the group. We start now, she said. We finish what they were too afraid to finish. Project Lazarus is back online. The team moved fast. They had no time to waste. The alien dreadnought still hung above Earth, silent but deadly. The world waited for a response. Some hoped for peace. Others prepared for war. But Lena Torres and her people were already on the move. They followed the trail of old files, broken codes, and forgotten reports. Project Lazarus had been buried deep, hidden beneath layers of government secrecy. But it had not vanished. It was last seen in Nevada. Not in a city, not even on a map. Deep in the desert, under an old Air Force base long thought abandoned. The base had been shut down decades ago. Official records said it had been used for weather research. But the truth was far stranger. Lena and her team arrived at night. The sky was dark, filled with stars. The wind howled through the ruins of broken buildings, fences rusted, signs faded. Nature had begun to take back what once belonged to men with secrets. Inside the base, they found more than they expected. Maps, blueprints, data drives that still worked. Dust covered everything, but the past had not been erased. One room stood out, sealed behind a heavy metal door. It took hours to break through. Inside was a vault filled with boxes, each marked with the same name, Project Lazarus. They opened them. Plans, notes, photos, and strange symbols filled the pages. The weapon was real. Not a bomb, not a missile, not even something you could fire. It was a machine, a device built to change the rules of battle, not by strength but by something deeper. Reality itself. No one fully understood what they had found. The scientists who built it were long gone. Some dead, some missing. Some who had run away before the final test could ever happen. What remained was only theory. Marcus Lee, the AI expert, studied the files late into the night. He was quiet, smart, and always seemed to see things others missed. He read every page, looked at every diagram, and finally looked up. "This isn't just a weapon," he said. "This is something else." "Like what?" Lena asked. "Something we weren't ready for then. Maybe still aren't now. They needed help. Someone who knew history, who could understand why this project was shut down. So they reached out to Ethan Blake. He answered within minutes." 2 days later, Ethan arrived at the base. He looked tired. The weight of saying no to the aliens had not left him, but when he saw what they had found, his eyes lit up. "This is it," he whispered. "This is what they feared." He explained what he knew. During the Cold War, when fear ruled the world, governments searched for weapons beyond imagination. Lazarus was one of them. Built in secret, funded in silence, tested in shadows. The idea was simple. If enemies came from space, Earth would need something more than guns. Something that could shift the battlefield in ways no one could predict. But the test went wrong. Something happened. The machine activated. For a few seconds, time stopped, or bent, or broke. No one who was there could explain it clearly. Those closest to the blast zone disappeared. Others came back, changed. So the project was buried, sealed away, never to be touched again. Until now. "We have to finish it," Lena said. "You don't know what you're waking up," Ethan warned. "We don't have a choice," she replied. They began work immediately. Engineers rebuilt circuits. Coders rewrote lost software. Marcus linked the system to modern tech. They worked around the clock, sleepless, driven. As they worked, strange things began to happen. Lights flickered without power. Voices echoed in empty halls. Sometimes people swore they saw others who weren't there. One man vanished in the middle of the night. No sign, no trace. Just gone. But they kept going. Because the dreadnought still watched. Because the ultimatum had been refused. Because if they didn't act, someone else would. And this time, humanity would not be caught unprepared. Project Lazarus was waking up. And with it, something else might be too. The machine hummed for the first time in decades. It started as a low sound, like wind through broken glass. Then it grew louder, deeper, until the floor beneath their feet vibrated. Lights flickered across the old base, waking up after years of silence. Marcus Lee stood at the control panel, his fingers moving fast over the keys. He had spent days rewriting code, bypassing corrupted files, and syncing ancient tech with modern systems. Now finally, the heart of Project Lazarus beat again. "We're in," he said. Lena's team stood around him, watching the screens light up with data they barely understood. Numbers scrolled endlessly. Graphs spiked and dropped. Strange symbols blinked, on and off. Something was happening. Ethan Blake stepped forward, his face pale. He had read the reports. He knew what had happened last time. But this time, they were going further than ever before. "Don't push too far," he warned. "We don't know what we're dealing with." "We have to know if it works," Lena replied. She gave the order. Marcus pressed the final command. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the room went dark. Not just the lights, everything. Sound, sight, even thought seemed to stop. There was no air, no space, no time, and then, light. A pulse, silent but powerful, shot out from deep beneath the earth. It moved faster than anything human made, faster than light itself. It slipped through the cracks of reality, unseen by eyes but felt by minds, far away. In orbit, satellites shut down. On the dreadnought above Earth, alien sensors failed. Across the world, people paused mid-step, blinking as if waking from a dream they could not remember. Something had changed. Back at the base, the lights came back on slowly. People gasped, some falling to their knees. Marcus clutched his head, breathing hard. "What? What did we do?" One of the engineers whispered. No one answered, because outside the world was already changing. In Denver, a man looked at his reflection in a window and saw himself blink out of existence for a second. In New York, a woman heard her own voice speaking words she hadn't yet said. In London, a clock ran backward for 5 minutes before fixing itself, and in the desert near the base, a group of soldiers vanished. Just gone. Nothing left behind. Lisa Harper, the diplomat who had been on the shuttle with Ethan, sat in a small tent nearby. She held her hands in front of her face, watching them blur in and out of focus. "I think I'm still here," she whispered. "But I'm not sure." Marcus checked the readings. The energy wave had reached far beyond the planet. It had touched something, or someone. He turned to Ethan. "We didn't just activate a weapon," he said. "We opened a door. Did we open it from our side, or theirs?" Ethan asked. No one had an answer. Meanwhile, Lena walked outside, looking up at the sky. The dreadnought was still there, floating silently. But now, something about it looked different. Its shape wavered slightly, like a mirage, like it wasn't fully real anymore. She turned back to the others. "If we scared them," she said, "they'll come back. They might not be the only ones." Marcus stared at the ground. He had seen something during the pulse. A flash, a vision, a memory that wasn't his, a place filled with stars, voices calling out in languages older than time, and something else, watching, waiting. "We should have listened to the warnings," he said quietly. "Too late now," Lena replied. She looked at the sky again. "Now we find out what we've done." The dreadnought did not fire. It should have. It had the power to wipe out every city on Earth with a single blast. But instead, it just floated there, above the clouds, silent and still. Then came the message. Not from the envoys who had first come to Earth. Not from the cold voices that had issued the ultimatum. This time, the signal was different. It came from inside the ship itself. A voice, broken by static, spoke through every radio, every screen, every speaker across the world. "We are not them." Those words spread like fire. People listened. Governments watched. Lena Torres stood in the desert base, staring at the screen, her face unreadable. Marcus Lee leaned closer. "This isn't the Concordance," he said. "Someone else is talking." On board the dreadnought, something had changed. The pulse from Project Lazarus had done more than disrupt systems. It had cracked open minds, made the crew see things they were never meant to see, memories that weren't theirs, voices in their heads, glimpses of places beyond space, and fear followed. Some of the crew broke away. They took control of part of the ship. Cut off from command, lost in doubt, they sent out the message, not as conquerors but as survivors. They wanted help, they wanted answers, and most of all, they wanted to leave. Ethan Blake was the first to respond. From his small office in New York, he sent a reply through secure channels. "Who are you?" The answer came quickly. "We were once loyal. Now we are lost. Meet us." Within hours, a plan formed. A small team would go up. Not soldiers, not diplomats. Just people who understood what had happened, what had been opened. Lena went. So did Ethan and Marcus. They boarded an old shuttle, one built for research, not war. It lifted off under heavy guard, watched by billions. As they climbed into orbit, the dreadnought loomed ahead. Its massive frame looked wrong now. Damaged, flickering like a broken light. They docked in silence. Inside, everything was still. No guards, no weapons. Only empty halls and soft lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. A group of aliens waited for them. They looked like the ones who had come before, but their eyes were different. Tired, afraid. One stepped forward. "Thank you for coming," she said. "We do not know if we are still ourselves." Ethan stepped forward. "What happened to your people?" he asked. The alien looked down. "You woke something," she said, "something that was sleeping. And now it speaks to us." Marcus felt a chill. He had seen something during the pulse, heard something, and now he was sure. They all had. "Something is still awake," he whispered. The alien nodded. "We cannot return home," she said. "Our empire will see us as broken, weak. We ask for refuge." Lena looked around. These were not enemies anymore, just people, like her, who had been changed. "You can stay," she said, "if you help us understand what we've done." The alien bowed her head. "We will try." Back on Earth, the news spread fast. The dreadnought was no longer a threat. Parts of it were now controlled by defectors, and they were asking for asylum. Governments argued. Some wanted to destroy the ship. Others saw opportunity. But Lena and her team already knew the truth. The fight wasn't over. It had only changed shape. Project Lazarus had done more than protect Earth. It had shaken the stars. And now, something far away had noticed. Something older than the Empire. Something watching. Waiting. And maybe, just maybe, waking up. The dreadnought was no longer alone. In the days following the pulse from Project Lazarus, more ships arrived. Not just from the defectors, but from other parts of the Galactic Concordance. Some came to fight. Others came to watch. But none came in peace. Earth had broken a rule it didn't know existed. No. By refusing the ultimatum, by using forbidden power, humanity had become something dangerous, not just to the Empire, but to the balance of the stars. And now, the Empire was coming back. This time, it brought an armada. Dozens of warships formed, a wall of steel and fire beyond the orbit of Mars. They moved with precision, silent and deadly. At their center was the Vengeance Carrier, a ship larger than any city on Earth, built for one purpose: total destruction. On the ground, Lena Torres stood in the control room beneath the Nevada desert. The walls were lined with screens showing the alien fleet growing closer by the hour. "We don't have much time," she said. Marcus Lee sat at the main console, fingers flying over keys. He had spent days studying the data from the pulse. What he found scared him. "This isn't just a weapon," he told the others. "It doesn't destroy things the way we think. It changes them. Then we use that," Ethan Blake said. "We make them see what we want them to see." They gathered what little intel they had. The defectors helped, sharing stolen data from the Empire's command network. What they learned confirmed their fears. The Empire wasn't just angry, it was afraid. Lazarus had done more than disrupt systems. It had made entire fleets question reality, made soldiers doubt their own thoughts, made leaders wonder if their empire was even real. So Lena made a choice. "We don't fight them like they expect," she said. "We show them why they should be afraid." Work began immediately. Project Lazarus was modified, not to attack but to shield, to hide, to twist space and time around Earth so that nothing could reach it without losing itself first. It was a gamble, a big one. If it worked, Earth would become untouchable. If it failed, the planet might vanish entirely. The countdown began. As the alien armada crossed into Earth's orbit, the sky darkened. Ships filled the view from every continent. People watched, in silence, waiting for the end. But then, something changed. The air crackled, the ground trembled, a deep hum echoed through the bones of the planet. Lazarus activated. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the enemy ships began to break, apart, not from weapons fire but from themselves. Pilots saw their own deaths before they happened. Engines fired in directions that did not exist. Weapons turned on their users without being fired. Time looped, space folded. Some ships vanished, others crashed into themselves. Those who survived fled. Back on Earth, the team watched in silence as the last of the armada disappeared into the void. "We did it," Lisa whispered. "No," Marcus said. "We broke them." Ethan looked at the screen where the dreadnought had once hovered. "We showed them something they couldn't understand," he said. "And now they'll never come back." Lena's hands were shaking. She looked at the others. "No," she said. "Now, they'll tell others what we did, and someone worse will come to see for themselves." Outside, the sun rose over the horizon. Earth had won, but the stars had taken notice, and something else was watching. The silence after the battle was louder than any explosion. Space was empty again. The alien ships were gone. Some had fled. Others had simply stopped being. Earth still spun. The sun still rose. But nothing was the same. People looked to the sky with new eyes. Not fear, not hope, just knowing. We are not safe. But we are not weak either. In the days that followed, the world changed. Governments reformed. Old borders faded. New laws were made, not to rule, but to protect. For the first time in history, Earth stood as one. But Lena Torres knew it wouldn't last. She stood at the edge of the Nevada base, looking down into the deep chamber where Project Lazarus still pulsed with quiet power. It had saved them. But it had also opened something they could not close. Marcus Lee walked beside her. "It's still awake," he said. "I know," she replied. He had been studying the data nonstop. Strange readings came from deep space. Echoes of the pulse, ripples in reality that hadn't stopped moving. Something far away had felt it, and it had answered. Ethan Blake arrived later that day. He no longer wore a suit or spoke in careful words. Now, he carried the weight of a new role. First human ambassador, to the stars, but not for peace. For warning. He met with the defectors who had stayed behind, those who had broken from the Empire and chose Earth over home. They shared what little they knew. The Galactic Concordance was in chaos. Once unchallenged, now questioned. Some systems had declared independence. Others had vanished without a trace, and everywhere the stories spread. Of a planet that did not fall, of a weapon that did not kill, but broke minds, of a species that should never be touched again. Lisa Harper helped set up a new council, not just humans but also the defectors, scientists, soldiers, thinkers. Their job was not to rule, but to watch, to prepare, because they all knew the truth. They had won this war, but not every enemy had been defeated. Some had only just begun to notice them. Weeks passed, then months. Project Lazarus was sealed, locked beneath layers of protection, guarded by people who understood what it could do. Lena's team became the silent force behind Earth's new defense. Not armies, not weapons, but knowledge, secrets, plans for things that might never happen. But always ready, Marcus disappeared one night. Left behind only notes, maps, warnings. He had seen something in the code, heard voices in the static. He believed he could understand what had woken up, and maybe, just maybe, he could speak back. No one tried to stop him. They just hoped he would return. On the final day of the year, Ethan stood on a hill outside Denver and looked at the stars. Behind him, a child drew strange symbols in the dirt, shapes that matched the ones inside the Lazarus chamber. When Ethan asked where he had seen them, the boy only smiled. "I dreamed them," he said. Ethan looked back at the sky. Earth had survived, but out there, something else was waiting, watching, dreaming too. And one day it would come to see what it had made.